You are listening to USALA, your voice from Philadelphia to the world.
Welcome. You are listening to Voices of Change on USALA Media, and the host of the Republican Zone, Drew Murray, will be joining us shortly. But before we get into the conversation with Drew Murray, because today we're combining shows, Voices of Change with the Republican Zone, I just want to give kind of a refresh, a restart of what USALA is currently doing and will be doing in the near future. As you all know, we've discussed this throughout the 3 years that USALA now has been in its existence, that we gave birth to this beautiful place here where this is the hub, the platform where it's the people's voice that is being heard. It is an independent media hub where we discuss local, national, and regional news. We're in politics, culture, entertainment, all from a high caliber standard, if you will. USALA Media is a nonpartisan media center. We don't have a party affiliation here. This was founded in 2017, and the foresight of USALA is to provide a culturally inclusive multimedia center. That's the goal that we have here, and we have had since the birth of USALA Media. USALA recognizes, and probably that was the main reason why the urgency to establish such a place, a media center, because USALA recognizes that Latinos need a prominent and influential platform to promote Latinos' interest and oppose further marginalization and deficits within the Latino leadership, which we all know we do have that here, especially in north central Philadelphia. Subsequently, the genesis of USALA was birthed to bridge the leadership vacuum through radio, TV, and digital news, and that's where we're moving in the near future. Actually, near future meaning that's exactly where we're headed. Our mission is to provide an independent hub, a media hub, where community members can hear their own voices, where their values and interests and issues important to them come to life, understanding that open dialogue, brainstorming solutions, and becoming socially responsive are central components of empowerment and raising consciousness. So one of the things that sets USALA apart is a couple of things. We wanted to create, or we are creating, a one-stop shop media hub that serves as a curator source of content that reflects the diversity of the community. Not only Latino, but we're very diverse here in USALA. We have Black and Brown and Latino voices being heard here at this hub, at this platform, at USALA. The other thing is that we're developing programs here on politics, news, culture, health, and entertainment, but with the goal of doing so with the highest standards of cultural expression. And I want to mention this again because we have 4 important affiliates with USALA. We have Democracy Now!, we have Voice of America, we have Radio France International, and Futuro Media Group. And these affiliates, they're not small affiliates. These are well-rounded, respected affiliates around the world. Our biggest one is Voice of America. And Voice of America, they cater to 280 million people around the world with 40 languages. So for us, being a small hub from Philadelphia, having those affiliates I'm proud of the accomplishments that have been made at USALA with the help and the assistance not only of the people that work here, but also of the host that we have of high caliber at USALA. We have the Republican Zone, Drew Murray, who has been a part of the USALA family for quite some time now. And I keep motivating him. You have to stay. You can't go anywhere. And I keep him always motivated to stay here with us at USALA because he is a moderate voice, even though he is a Republican, a wealth of knowledge and information that he brings to USALA. So that's the type of diversity. That's why we're not a partisan media center. We are a nonpartisan media center. So Drew, welcome. And I was just giving kind of an opening of who we are. We hit like the reset button recently as to redefining what we're doing here and why we're doing this moving forward in 2021. I think it's important to have alternative media centers like USALA to give people a voice. That's why we're inclusive of all types of genres, people. We're a Latino. USALA is under the banner of a Latino media center, but we are inclusive of everyone. Drew.
Absolutely. I'm not used to being a minority. I am not. And in this, when I enter USALA, I am a minority.
Yeah.
Am I the only Republican, or does David?
We have David.
David Torres still does it. Yeah.
And shortly we're going to have another podcast coming. It's called the Gamble That Failed with Prince Jonathan Melvin. He wrote a book about that and talks about the intricacies and the political intricacies of politics in Philadelphia and how it marginalizes the poor people. And so that's going to be an interesting conversation with that podcast, and that's coming in 2 weeks.
Is Prince, is he a Republican right now?
He's a Republican now.
He's not always a Republican.
Well, he
goes back and forth.
He fluctuates back and forth. But Drew, so I was kind of given a recap of what we're doing here and the goal for USALA. There's a lot coming. We just signed another contract with Jacqueline Trimmer. Jacqueline Trimmer is a Republican. She's a moderate Republican from California, and her show is called Main Street, which talks about also the community and how the community is marginalized and how she's voicing the concerns and the voices of the people from the community. So that show is coming March the 6th. It's called Freedom. So that's another show that we're going to be having. So we're getting a lot of stories that are going to be told from the USALA platform. And we also have another podcast coming of a 16-year-old that's talking about racial inequality when it comes to sports and females. So that's another podcast that we're going to be hosting here at USALA coming.
Okay.
So we have a lot going on, and I just wanted to give the viewers and the listeners exactly what we're doing here at USALA. But I want to turn the page quickly, and we want to talk about the town hall meeting that President Biden had yesterday. I was able to watch that completely and get your thoughts on that as
I was
well.
not able to watch it completely, so you might have to fill me in a little bit.
Yeah.
To that town hall. I thought you were going to when you said town hall, I thought you were talking about our, and we'll talk about this as well. Our DA.
We're going to have
our DA.
Well, we can talk about
debate
that first.
But I did not see the Biden town hall yesterday.
Well, we can talk about the debate first
Okay.
if you want, and the candidates have confirmed that the debate will be hosted here at the USALA studio, and it's going to be an interesting conversation because it's going to be an interactive type of debate or forum, if you will, because we're going to have community members chime in to ask questions directly to the candidates. One of the things that I think we're going to have a host of questions relating to policing, relating to crime victims and how they're protected, how their rights are being protected under the current DA's administration.
Yes. Yeah, we should say this is a debate for the district attorney election.
Election is
coming
going to be held
in May.
In May, March the 10th.
Yeah.
At 1 o'clock.
The election's in May. I'm sorry.
Right.
So March the 10th, 1 to 3 p.m.
Right, and you're going to be one of the moderators.
Maybe one of the moderators is me, is Mr. Mendez and I.
And Mr. Mendez and yourself are going to be moderating because we need kind of like a even keel type of voice because you're leaning heavily towards not towards Larry Krasner.
I will be rooting for Carlos Vega in the primary, and Chuck Peruto in the general.
Yeah, because you think Chuck is going to cancel out Carlos Vega.
Meaning.
So you think Carlos Vega will not survive the?
I don't think he will. And
why you say that? What's your assessment on that?
Because there's a lot of money that's going to come from outside of Philadelphia.
And Charles Peruto has money.
And Chuck Peruto, yeah. So we talk about the primary first. So Carlos Vega, he's raised a lot of money actually. I haven't seen the most recent campaign reports, which 6 weeks? Are we 6 weeks yet? I don't even know if they're out. They wouldn't be out yet anyway. But I think Carlos had said he just raised about $150,000 to $200,000, which that's a good number for someone who's not an incumbent.
Well, you know that when Larry Krasner ran, they spent over like what, $5 million to $10 million just on that race. So, I mean, given, yeah, it's a sizable amount of money. But
And now
is it
that money
enough?
didn't
Is
come
it
from
enough?
his campaign, though. So I think that's a topic of discussion.
Yeah.
Because the campaign finance rules in Philadelphia say 3,000 max for an individual. I think it's still 3,000. It might be a little more now, and I believe 11,500 for a political committee.
Yeah.
Larry got a lot more money than that from George Soros.
Yeah.
And the way they do that, and it's not illegal, and a lot of people do it. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do it in a campaign, but Soros doesn't funnel it through Larry's campaign, for example.
Right.
He could pay for a radio spot on Usula and pay for it directly himself, and that's not considered a campaign contribution directly to Larry. So you're right. I think was it 5 million? I thought it was closer to 3 million, but you could be right.
I think it was about $5 million.
The rumor is now
that,
and it's a rumor, or it's the word on the street is 3 million is coming from Soros.
yeah.
I could be wrong. It's
Yeah.
a rumor, but I mean, John Legend sent money.
Well, there was
for
a lot of
Larry's
celebrities
campaign.
that sent money to that.
I think Philadelphians should pick who our next district attorney is, and the money from outside. I think look, hey, people do what they want with their money, and if John Legend sent me money on my campaign, I'd accept it. So I'm not saying it's wrong from that standpoint, but I think people should really look at where the money is coming from and decide, are they looking out for the best needs of Philadelphia, or are they looking for a cause?
Yeah.
And I think we should be voting for what best suits Philadelphia right now.
Well, that's true, I agree with you, and I think part of the topics of discussion at the candidates forum March the 10th at Usula Studio at 1:00, I think has to be on I would say 5 specific issues, Drew. We have to address these issues, and the candidates have to give an answer to the issues of drug laws, creating an option for to charge low-level drug offenders. We're going to talk about that. The use of force, how to handle fatal use of force incident involving police. That's something that we have to talk about. How about rehabilitation and prevention? Issues relating to how to decrease crime and increase public safety. That's something that has to be discussed. And how our jails, how to reduce pretrial incarceration. Juvenile justice is another issue that we're going to be talking about and prepping for that for the candidates. Policies regarding charging children in adult court. And victims' rights is going to be a big issue. It has to be a policies on protecting and respecting victims of crime. So these are the issues that we have to ask these candidates and see what response we get from them, and let the public square, based on these questions, make up their mind who would be the best person to represent us as the chief of the district attorney's office, which they prosecute over 50,000 cases a year. That's a lot of cases.
And I think one of the big questions also needs to be the increase in violence,
Yeah,
specifically the last 2 to 3 years.
yeah,
And you and I disagree on this. I really put it on the shoulders of our current district attorney.
yeah.
You disagree, that's fine. But I see a direct correlation, and correlation does not mean causation, but in this case, I think it does. I'd also like to talk about campaign finance, because I think that's a question that Larry needs to answer. That, it's interesting. I think if it was flipped and a Republican was getting money, let's say a Republican runs for mayor, and let's say in the next cycle, and let's say, we're already seeing all these city council candidates and potential candidates like Rebecca Reinhardt. If a Republican comes out of the woodwork and somehow is financed with $10 million from outside, I think the people in the Democratic Party would freak out about that. I think if it was flipped to the other side, it's like you don't even hear about this right now. He's kind of found a way around campaign finance reform in Philadelphia.
But it's not illegal. What
No,
he's done,
absolutely not.
right? So if he found a way to do it, and and he's getting money to support his candidacy, then he's doing it legally. There's nothing anyone can do about that. The verdict is going to be by the voters, and they're going to come down with that verdict in May, whether or not they want to keep Larry Krasner in that seat. And you know, you and I can disagree to agree on many issues. I agree on some issues with Larry, and then I disagree with some issues of Larry. Now, to put, as we had this discussion before on your show, to put all the murder rate or the increase of it on Larry's shoulders, I think it's kind of a misrepresentation of what that office is and who he is. He is liberal. We know that. He's never lied about that. But we have to strike a balance here, and then talk about, you know, if he's done or been effective as the chief police officer, if you will.
We'll talk about that, what his job is, but we're going to take a real quick break. You're listening to Usula Media and the Republican Zone.
And Voices of Change.
And Voices of Change.
So, Drew.
The Republican Zone is brought to you by Drew Murray, a modern view from the Republican lens, covering local and national news, understanding that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to politics. The Republican Zone airs Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m. and Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m.
Welcome back. You're listening to Usula Media and the Republican Zone. I'm here with Leslie ACOSTA. And we're talking about Larry Krasner again. I feel like we talk about him every week, but I think it's worth talking about.
It's
Larry
a lead
every
up
week.
to the debate that we're going to be
But
having.
you said something very interesting, and I want to grab on it, because you said, what is his job? And the problem is, I think Larry Krasner thinks his job is, he believes he is, and this is a quote from him. He's a public defender. That's what he used to do. He is now a public defender with power. That came from his lips. But that's not his job. His job is to be the chief prosecutor in the city of Philadelphia. And I don't think he treats the job that way. I don't. I think he believes he is still a public defender, and now he's just a public defender with power.
Well, well, listen, I sometimes, you know, roles can be convoluted. And I agree to a certain extent where he has taken the power. He was a public defender and a civil rights attorney, lawyer that's all his life. That was his career. Now he has a little bit of power to make decisions. Has he, I don't want to call it abuse of power. I just want to say that he has utilized the power that he has as the chief prosecutor in Philadelphia to exercise his ability as the head or chief prosecutor to create justice for certain.
I think you were about to say agenda, but you don't want to use that word, Les. I saw you said ability. I don't want to. It is an agenda. It is an agenda, and I think that is not what a district attorney is supposed to do. Look, we talked about those questions that you talked about. You know, we need to talk about the police and their interaction with the community. To me, it's not a police violence issue. Honestly, it's a police trust issue. If we talk specifically about the city of Philadelphia, I think the city of Philadelphia has actually done a good job, and I don't think there's not a huge history of violence with the police in the city of Philadelphia. Now, there was the killing of Mr. Wallace Jr., and I've talked about that on my show, and I think it was a justified shooting. It was a tragic incident that gentleman, Mr. Wallace, had mental illness, and that's a tragedy. But
well, how do you hold on,
yeah,
Drew,
okay.
hold on, and I'm going to push back. How do you justify a killing of an individual that stated by you just now, had mental health issues? How do you justify that?
Because he went after the police with a weapon.
But he has mental health issues, and that
But
is.
Being a police officer is not a death sentence. It's a job, and it's a danger that they know going in, and they understand that. But they need to be able to defend themselves.
Okay, so they're going to defend themselves, knowing that, or kill someone, knowing that this guy had mental health issues, because the police knew prior to shooting this individual that he had mental health issues, because when it was stated to the police that he had these issues.
And they were trying to deal with it.
Yeah, but how do you deal with it by killing someone that does have mental health? It's wrong, Drew. It's wrong.
It is not wrong. You were absolutely wrong here, Leslie. It is not. He went after them with a knife. It was self-defense.
Let's look at the premise.
What should they have done?
I think they could have restrained him. I think they could have restrained him somehow.
How could they restrain
They
him?
could have called back for backup, but to kill him and to shoot him, he came after them with a knife. They could have shot him on the leg. They could have shot him somewhere where they could have control the situation, but they did not. They shot this guy knowing that he had mental health issues. There was ways to de-escalate the situation, and the police didn't do it.
Now, I've actually talked to a lot of police officers about this specific incident because I wanted to know. The first question I asked was, why was he not tased? And the answer given immediately was, most police officers in Philadelphia don't have a taser.
Well, then they need to. If they don't have a taser, then that's something that the police
But
department.
that wasn't those police officers' fault. Those two gentlemen's fault.
Yeah.
That was number one. Number two, because a lot of people say this, why didn't they shoot him in the leg? They're not trained to shoot in the leg because once they have no other choice but to shoot because they're being attacked, they're taught to take the person down, not in the leg. Because if you try to shoot in the leg, number one, it's a lot harder to do than you think it is. Number one. Number two, if you shoot in the leg, there's a much greater chance of missing and hitting someone else, an innocent bystander. So they are taught, they are trained not to shoot at the leg, and there are good reasons for that because there's more of a chance of someone outside of the incident being shot if they try to shoot at the leg. There's also, and I forget the exact number of feet, but I think it's the 15-foot rule that once someone who has a weapon is within 15 feet, and I'm not talking about a gun because then they could be outside of 15 feet, and I think it's 15 feet, they could be on you within 1 second. So the police are taught and trained within 15 feet if someone has a weapon and is coming at them with the purpose of using that weapon, then they really are only left with one choice.
Drew, you can justify this however.
I'm saying how they're trained.
Well, listen,
It's not a spin, this is facts.
then they need to be retrained.
Okay, well then that's a different argument.
But then the
that's
police,
a different argument.
yeah, but then the police department, they need to retrain their department to first of all to de-escalate situations. Number two, if you're dealing with a person and you know that a person has mental health issues, as this guy had, there was no justification to shoot this guy.
So
none whatsoever.
So you want to
Drew.
de-escalate a situation? Should we
They
send a
could've-
social worker out there?
No,
if we did, the social worker would be dead.
The police has to wear different hats, and unfortunately, they have to wear that hat because you're dealing with different people that have different issues, and you're confronted with many issues at a time. And in a situation like that, you were dealing with a man with mental health issues. How as a police officer do you deal with a specific situation like that? And that is something that the police department they must retrain these police officers in their training manual. That should be part of
this is not
their training.
the Philadelphia Police Department. This is how the police are trained.
Well, they need to get
nationally.
retrained.
Okay, but that's a different argument.
But that's an argument that needs to be taken and that needs to be forced within the police department. And I don't know who they can have this conversation with, but they should take that incident as an example to rethink how they're going to train moving forward or even the existing police officer. How do we retrain police officers to de-escalate situations rather than shooting people?
But they weren't de-escalating the situation. The police officers were walking backwards, saying, drop the weapon, drop the weapon, drop the weapon, stay where you are. They were trying to de-escalate the situation.
I think they could have managed that a little differently.
Okay.
That's my take. But listen, that's another whole.
That is another whole issue.
Yeah.
And another issue as part of that story is Mr. Wallace was supposed to be in jail.
Okay.
But he wasn't. And why wasn't he in jail?
So tell me that Larry Krasner let him out.
He absolutely did. Yes, the DA's office let him out.
Krasner let him out.
The DA's office let him out. Yes.
Larry Krasner let him out to go out and shoot. And to be crazy out in the street and to purposely come after police officers to kill them.
Well, no, he didn't do that, but he let him out of jail.
Listen, Drew, please.
Come on, Leslie. Sometimes when I'm right, you got to say I'm right.
No, let me say this, and I'm going to push back. We have currently in our jails, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, about 6% of the population with mental health issues. A person with mental health issues should not be incarcerated.
Okay. Should they be on the street?
We should no.
But that's a different.
We should de-incarcerate people with mental health issues, and find a rehabilitative form to help people with mental health issues. It costs more people to incarcerate a person with mental health issues, not only because of the medicines, of the treatment that they get, than to have them out in the community and get and facilitate the help that they need. This is something that needs to occur.
I agree with you. I agree they
Yeah,
shouldn't
but
be
you
incarcerated.
can't say Larry Krasner let this
Yes, I
crazy
can.
do out and then
He absolutely
no,
did.
No, I disagree with you. I
But he
totally
did.
disagree. He did what, Drew?
He let him out of jail.
Yeah, but-
numerous times.
Okay, this guy has mental health issues.
Okay, well,
what is he gonna do?
We're gonna. I sometimes think we need to
Move
define the mental health issue as well.
Right.
This gentleman knowingly did things prior to this. He stole things. He was violent. He did things. Was he mentally ill? That's what I read in the paper. I can't say I'm not
Well,
a
you're
doctor.
reading.
And I'm not saying.
Remember, mainstream media always put a spin to their story, and you always don't get the right facts from.
But I
mainstream
also
media.
think that everything is pointed to mental illness. Just because you are mentally ill, it doesn't mean that you don't know the difference between right and wrong. So I agree with you. If someone is completely mentally ill, they should not be incarcerated. But just because someone has a mental illness, if they know the difference between right and wrong, then incarceration is the right thing.
Drew, when someone is decompensated mentally,
To what
they
level?
do
though?
not know what right from wrong is. They cannot exercise correct.
Are you saying
judgment. And I'm
everyone-
not an expert.
I
I'm not
don't-
an.
but does
I'm not
it-
an expert in mental health. But when someone is, and obviously this guy was decompensated. Wasn't he naked?
No, he was not naked.
Or was it he's taking his clothes off or something like that? Or he was what provoked
That must have been a different video.
What,
that
okay,
you're
what,
thinking
what
of a different video.
provoked him to be so angry?
Well, they had gone out there numerous times, so they did try to
Okay.
de-escalate that situation. I think it was the third time that day.
Okay,
maybe
then-
the second time that day, but like the third time in a few days, and I think it was like 4 or 5 times in a week.
So right,
So they
what,
did try to
you know what they
de-escalate
could
the
have done?
situation.
They could have 302 the guy. They could have 302 the man if they went out 3 times because he had, to that situation. He could have been 302, Drew, and he could have been hospitalized. But they didn't take those measures. And part of what you're saying, police officers can't be social workers. Part of the training has to include
no.
all of that. It has to encompass all of
I
that.
agree with you. No, I think you misheard me. I said we can't just send a social worker out there because you do know that a lot of the people who want to defund the police want to send social workers out.
Well, that's not true about defunding the police.
Do you want to defund the police?
You got absolutely not.
Okay,
We cannot
all right.
defund the police.
I don't think we could keep doing a show together if you wanted to defund the police.
We cannot do that.
So
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And defund, just so we define that, because a lot of people, it doesn't mean get rid of police, but
Yeah.
defund in its by definition means you take all money away from the police, which means get rid of all police.
No, you can't do that.
You
I
can't
mean
do
that is absurd to even think about that. We need policing, and we need order, and we need order and control. In our cities and in our states, I mean, no. This defunding the police is not right.
It is silly.
It's silly.
But
Very
I
silly.
agree with you on a lot of other issues. Number one, I think we need less incarceration. I think we need to stop putting people in jail for minor offenses. Not violent offense, they got to be put away.
Yeah.
Take out the mental illness, or people who have continuously made offenses, even if they're minor offenses. Like if someone smokes marijuana, they shouldn't be put in jail. If they sell marijuana, they shouldn't be put in jail. But if they're arrested for selling marijuana 10 times, maybe they should be put in jail.
Drew, let me just say this: any person that commits a violent crime, there has to be an underlying issue, mentally. Someone that commits a violent crime.
So you're saying someone who has a temper is a mental issue?
One thing is to have a temper, right?
Then
Because we all
I must have a
hold on.
mental issue.
One is to have a temper, but know the fine line, to kind of cross that line and take that anger to another level, to kill someone, or to cause bodily harm. That's an issue. That's an underlying issue that needs to be addressed.
A mental illness issue?
I think there is an underlying issue. There has to be
A mental illness issue.
Probably. I'm not an expert. I'm not an
yeah,
expert,
I
but we
disagree
did
with you
have
on
an individual that came to USALA and did a podcast on the show Justice Conversation. A doctor, a psychologist by trade. And he talked about this issue. He talked about people that commit violent crimes and how that studies have shown how that's attached to an underlying issue.
But that does
mental
not mean
health.
they don't know the difference between right and wrong. I mean,
I
I'm not
think-
trying to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like basically what you're saying. Anybody who does a violent act has mental illness and they shouldn't be
I
incarcerated.
think there's an underlying issue.
Then they shouldn't be
that-
incarcerated?
That I'm not saying that they
Do
should.
you think all murders
no,
should not be
no,
incorporated?
No, I don't think they shouldn't be incarcerated. What I'm saying is, what I'm trying to say is there's an underlying issue. Not that they shouldn't be incarcerated, but there's issues there that obviously need to be addressed. And if you commit a violent crime, you should be incarcerated and you should pay for that crime.
Okay, all right. I thought we were going to
But
disagree
is
on
there
that then.
issues with that? Absolutely, there has to be an underlying issue. If you go to the extent of committing a crime like that, an atrocious crime like that. But let's talk about the town hall meeting that Biden had last night. It was an interesting dialogue. So the reviews are in.
Were the reviews good?
Kind of in the middle.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then you're going to have to tell me about the town hall because I
Yeah.
did not watch it. but
So
you-
we'll talk a little bit
we'll
about
talk
that,
when we
and
come
we'll get a
back.
spin. Remember that it's Voices of Change, and
and the Republican zone.
that's right.
The Republican Zone is brought to you by Drew Murray, a modern view from the Republican lens, covering local and national news, understanding that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to politics. The Republican Zone airs Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m. and Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m.
Welcome back. You're listening to Usula Media and the Republican Zone and the Voices of Change with Drew Murray and Leslie Costa. So we're going to talk about the town hall. So you're going to tell me what happened during the town hall.
Well,
'cause I did not watch it.
different different flashpoints from the debate from the town hall meeting, and we can see the flaws and the virtues of Biden in display yesterday. He talked a little bit too much. He did mention that by the end of July of this year that everyone was going to be, or at least vaccinated.
Was Fauci standing behind him like he used to do with President Trump and like shaking his head, oh, why did he just say that?
Now, then he corrected that and said it would be available. So there's a difference of a person being vaccinated and then a person being, the vaccinations being available to folks. So
I think that's probably accurate. I'm not a doctor, but as we get more and more vaccines available to us, Johnson & Johnson, I believe, should be approved within a week or two.
Uh-huh.
And that's a single shot. And hopefully there's a few more down the road. And so I think that is doable, I would think. I mean, there's 330 million people in the United States. No one under 16 is supposed to get this vaccine, at least not the Moderna and the Pfizer. I don't know about the Johnson & Johnson. I don't think anybody under 16 is supposed to get that either. So what is that? I'd say, 250 million people in this country? I did the math before. Are 16 and up. So really that's the number that need to be vaccinated. And to get herd immunity, if it's 75%, I think we only need to get to about 210, 220 million to
Yeah.
get herd immunity. I wouldn't think that's that difficult.
Well, 30 million people already have been vaccinated. And the other question that was highlighted in the forum was that priority has been given to the health workers. Certain people have priority with these vaccines, and then it hasn't really rolled out to the people. So that was part of the complaints in the town hall meeting. The other interesting fact that came out of the town hall meeting was the opening the schools back up. And there's a lot of confusion about whether the administration will consider a school whether the school they're going to open just for one day or for a full 5 weeks. And I don't know if that's going to happen. We're now, February, March is in a week or so, with a couple of months left for the school year to end. So I don't know how viable that is to bring all the kids back to school full time.
In my opinion, they should have been back full time in September.
Well, they should have.
They should have.
They should have.
Absolutely.
I think so.
I have 2 daughters, and they are both in school, and there are 2 different schools,
Yeah.
and they're both in grade school. They're both in school and have been in school since September.
Well, not only this, look, Drew.
In person, not even hybrid. In person since September.
Yeah, having the kids at home, virtual, it puts a burden on the parents, right? Especially if parents have to work, they have bills
Absolutely.
to pay. That becomes a very challenging situation for parents that do work like yourself, like myself. And then you have the kids at school, and you have to kind of monitor what they're doing. It puts parents at a very difficult disadvantage. And so it has hurt a lot of families in this process. So,
and I'm lucky, and you're probably lucky as well, that we can be home more than most. I mean, if I was a 9-to-5 job where I have to be there, and what I'll call an essential worker, someone who works in a supermarket, it would be impossible if I had children who were 5, 6, 7 years old. I'm lucky that I can work from home most days, and that my children are old enough. They're in 6th and 7th grade where, if I do have to leave for a couple hours, they can be at home by themselves. And I'm also lucky that I have, the internet connection at home that we have 4 people between my wife, myself, and my 2 daughters. When they are virtual, like tomorrow, they'll probably be virtual because of the snow.
Yeah.
There's never going to be a snow day ever again.
10 inches of snow we're going to get tomorrow?
I think 8.
Yeah.
So like tomorrow, I would say there's a large percent of the population that doesn't have an internet connection that's going to be able to handle 4 people at home at once.
Yeah.
I'm lucky in that way.
Yeah.
So
we're blessed. We're blessed.
We
and
are,
there's,
absolutely.
There's parents who have lost their jobs
Yeah.
because they can't find a babysitter, and because of the COVID-19, people can come to the home to help with the homeschooling. So it's been very challenging, very, very challenging.
And my one daughter's school, part of the problem in Philadelphia, and it is specific to Philadelphia, is they don't have the ventilation system.
Mm-hmm.
But my daughter's school, their windows are open today. They open up every window. They turn on the heat and they open up every window. And
Which is a good.
And they're like that. They have their coats on.
Yeah.
While they're in the class. So the city of Philadelphia could do that as well. So the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers. I mean, I think what they're doing is wrong. I'll flat out say it. I'm never going to get their endorsement in a campaign anyway. What they're doing is wrong. They can go back to school and they can do it safely, even in the horrible buildings that we do have in the city.
Well, Catholic schools are open.
Yeah,
my
Catholic
son
schools
goes
have
to Catholic school, and he's in school. But yeah, public schools should be. They
should be open, and I get it. Like where the schools where my children go to, one the buildings are brand new, and the others, the older one, that they have to open the windows, and put a coat on.
Yeah.
It is essential for these children to be in school.
I agree.
I can't imagine these students. So last year they were both virtual from March to the end of May, early June.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the impact it had on them in that period of time. There are public schools and charter school students in this city right now who have not been in school for a year. And they're not getting the same education. Definitely not in grade school. High school, they might be able to do it. It is a different story for high school kids, in my opinion. But these kids in grade school, I mean, they're going to have an uphill battle.
The learning decompensates,
Mhm.
right? And then you have kids at home doing what? They can't be reading all day. They can't be on the computer all day. They can't be on their games all day,
Mm-hmm.
and that becomes challenging for the parents because how creative can you get having a kid all day in a home?
Absolutely.
It's very challenging.
Just over the weekends, my wife and I are having. We've run out of ideas. We've run out of ideas at this point. There's like nothing we can do with our children that we haven't already done.
Yeah. So
I mean, and I'm blessed that we're very lucky, but we're to the point where my children we're bored.
Well, then you should take them hiking.
We
Go
take
to
them
the
hiking.
Poconos, yeah.
It's been so cold this winter.
Well, that,
Normally we would do that.
Yeah.
But it's been, of course, during a pandemic, we have to have the coldest and harshest winter that we've had in 10 years. I mean, God help us.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
It's been tough.
Yeah, it's been tough.
But
I agree.
I'm blessed overall. Absolutely.
I agree. Schools should be open across the board.
Absolutely.
I-
Definitely
I-
grade schools. High schools.
absolutely.
Because the high school kids do have some issues.
Yeah.
I know St. Joe's Prep has had to close down numerous times because kids, they don't follow the rules. Those darn teenagers. So high schools have had issues, but they're across the board. I think around the country, grade schools, and when I say grade school, K to 8, have not had issues.
Yeah.
So-
I think I agree. With that,
So we can agree on something.
Absolutely. Now, let me just say this also, going back to the town hall,
Town hall, yep.
meeting. So there was two issues, right? He talked about he reiterated that he doesn't want to defund the police. That's not where he's going. He says the police should have more money for police work, which I agree. I think
Well, that's the only way you're going to get cameras and you're going to get
not only that. I
tasers.
think that the job of a police officer is very difficult. It's very hard.
Absolutely.
And I think if you shortchange money to go into the police department, that means you are jeopardizing our safety here in our state.
And I think police officers do need to be they need to improve. I don't know if retrained is the correct term, but they need improved training.
Yeah.
And look,
they need training on cultural sensitivity. Yeah. They need training on mental health, on how to deal with mental health issues. They need training. Well, improve.
In every job you should be training continuously.
Obviously, yeah. Now, what I don't agree is to reward bad behavior of police officer and give them increases in their pay when they do something incorrect. If a police officer is taken off the beat and you're reprimanded, then that police officer by any means should not get an increase. And that has happened within the culture of the police department, where there have been several police officers who have been reprimanded, and on top of being reprimanded, they have gotten an increase within the police department. That has to be revisited, but that's another conversation that we can have in another segment. The other issue that was talked about is the government, the Biden administration is looking towards canceling $50,000 in student loan debt per borrower. So that, to me, I think that's a good thing. I can use a decrease in $50,000.
We're disagreeing on this one.
$50,000.
And this is why I feel bad for these children who went in and took out too much money, but they made a decision to do it. They signed a contract. When I came out of college, I had, I think, around $20,000 in debt. I signed a contract that I would pay that back, I did pay it back.
But there's students that are not as fortunate as you, that you only had to pay $20,000. There's students like myself and others that had to fund my entire college education because my parents didn't have a college fund, or they were not educated enough to have a college fund. So not every parent, not every parent has a college fund for their kids to go to college, and you have to fund your own college education.
But
that's one issue.
For $20,000, I could have funded my own college. I didn't. I went to Dickinson College, and that was at the time $20,000 a year. So no, I couldn't have funded it. But if I had $20,000, I could have gone through college and paid for $20,000. I wouldn't have been able to go to Dickinson. I would maybe have had to do community college for a couple of years, and then maybe finished my last 2 years at Temple. But at that time, $20,000, I could have done it.
Well,
and you got to make decisions.
You're blessed. You're blessed that you were able to just pay $20,000 of your student loan. Not too many people in the city of Philadelphia have that luxury, or across this country, to do that. But let me just say this. There, another thing that I pushed hard for this when I was in the state legislature, and we wanted to create a sponsor legislation on this and I was doing it with Mike Driscoll, was to create a curriculum before entering college to do financial literacy in high schools.
I agree with you.
So that students can learn how to manage money, how this issue of borrowing money when they go to college, the implications of that, the ramifications of all of that. And I think the absence of information, or not creating a curriculum like that, puts a lot of kids when they go into college at a disadvantage. Because when you go to college, you get bombarded with credit cards. Kids don't know anything about managing money, having a bank account, getting loans. They sign these loans and not knowing the implications that you have to pay that back in 6 months sometimes with a high interest rate of 7% and higher. So financial literacy for our high school students is paramount, and I think we need to push that issue a little bit.
I would agree with that. And Alan Dom is trying to do something like that on a city level, but I also think there is a level of common sense, Leslie. I spoke to a young man who worked at a bar near my house. This is a few years ago, and he's like, I have $100,000 in student loans. And I said, well, wow, what did you go to school for? He said, I went to school to be a teacher. I said, you have $100,000 in undergrad loans, and you were going to be a teacher. There has to be a certain level of common sense to understand that how is that person going to pay back $100,000 if he has an undergrad degree only, number one, and he's becoming a teacher. I think he made a mistake, and I feel bad for him. But that's a mistake that he has to deal with. I paid back my student loans. I signed a contract, and if you want to, maybe I had more information. I don't think I had more information. I looked at it, and I said, how much can I afford to pay back over 10 years? You have 10 years to do it. So,
well, you can do 10, 15, 30 years to pay
I think
back.
the Stafford loan you had to do.
Oh,
I don't think
okay.
it's called Stafford anymore, but back when I was there, it was the Stafford. It was the guaranteed student loan. It was 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, if you go different, and again, if you go a different route than that, the Stafford loan was literally through the government. That was definitely 10 years.
Yeah.
But maybe you're right. I'm not an expert in this.
Well,
but the bottom line is you sign a contract, and just because you make a mistake in the signing of that contract doesn't mean the rest of us are supposed to bail you out. I have sympathy for them.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you're right to bail someone out, but this is an issue. A lot of people in that student loan debt, they don't have the same common sense that you have to look at a loan and say, okay, this is what I'm going to take out for my college education. Not too many people have that common sense and that ability to do that, and that's fine. He made a mistake, but I think this financial literacy piece is very important.
I agree with that. I would agree with that.
For students, for high school students, and mandate that. Make it a mandate that you have to take a
Sure.
course
No, I would agree with that.
in financial literacy.
And here's another example.
Because you have doctors and lawyers, and they have $300,000 in loans, paying that back.
I mean, my MBA cost me $20,000 out of pocket. I could have gone to Wharton, but I looked at the price of Wharton versus the price of Temple, and I chose Temple. There was one of the saying, I could have gone anywhere, and I chose Temple. I could have gone to Wharton, but Wharton would have cost me $80,000.
Yeah.
So I made the choice that I could afford $20,000 over a 5-year period, but I could not afford to go to Wharton.
Right. So
I made that decision.
But you made that financial decision because you were able to use common sense and look at your pros and cons. You have people don't think like that, Drew. Not everybody can think and have the mindset that you have, right? So we can't.
Not everyone is as smart as I am.
No one is as smart as you are, Drew. Yeah.
I think you're giving me too much credit there, Leslie. I'll be honest with you. No, but it's just that's some.
It's the
life
nature of the
is not
beast.
always fair.
It's not fair.
I think Bill Gates said life's not always fair, and you got to get used to it.
But the other option is if you do Peace Corps, and you do that, and you go 3 years,
I would
you
be fine with a program like that, sure.
You get your student loans pardoned. I mean, there's options to get your student loan pardoned. And if you do Peace Corps and you sign up for that, that's a way
I
of
would
getting.
agree with that.
That's
I
a way
also
of getting
think
out.
too many people are going to college. People should be going into trade schools and doing other avenues. I think kids nowadays are told you have to go to college.
Right.
And if you don't go to college, you're not a success.
Right.
When you can go into a trade like a union electrician and come out with no debt and be making $100,000 within a couple years of high school.
Well, listen, that's true. But they have to make that available.
Oh,
right?
everyone should have the opportunity to go to college, but I don't think everyone should.
Well, they have to make the technical schools available.
I think high school as well, yeah.
I think
we do technical schools.
And I think
again.
in Philadelphia, I went to a vocational school. I
Yeah.
went to Masbom High School. I think they only have like 2 or 3 vocational schools throughout the city of Philadelphia. But I think there needs to be a hub in Philadelphia where they can provide these technical trade school to and make it available to anyone who wants to do a technical,
Sure.
have a technical trade versus a college.
Yeah. We have a shortage of trades in this country and the city. In a city that is a union city,
Yeah.
that you can get a great job
Yeah.
and be making that type of money after a couple of years after high school. And all the trades in the city of Philadelphia are saying that they can't find these kids.
Yeah.
Because everyone is the mindset of, okay, I finished my senior in high school, I have to go to college. I'm a failure if I don't go to a college.
Yeah.
If I go to a trade school, or if I go into an apprenticeship, then it's looked down upon.
Mhm.
And I think we need to stop doing that as a society.
Yeah.
I mean,
A job is a job, and if if it makes decent money, whether it's a trade school or 4-year college, you're making decent money. You can survive on that better than $7.25 an hour. And Biden did talk about that in the town hall meeting of increasing the minimum wage from $7.25 to $15 an hour. Small businesses, the private sector, they're against increasing to $15 an hour because then they say it hurts their business. They
There
have
should
to
be
pay
no-
out. They have to pay out more for their insurance.
I was an economics.
Say that again.
I was an economics major
Right.
in college.
Right.
and I have an MBA.
Okay.
There should
I
not,
have an
there
MBA
should,
too, so
there
you and I
should
have-
not be a minimum wage. The market should determine the wage.
Well,
There
and-
should be no minimum
So
wage.
what's the inflation?
So I definitely don't believe in $15 an hour. But I don't think there should ever be a minimum wage.
Right, but the market right now, given the COVID-19, does it because of the fluctuation of the economy right now is up and is down? Can we afford, right? Can companies or private companies afford to pay out 15?
Absolutely not.
It's not
It'll have a
sustainable.
negative effect.
It have a negative effect.
It'll be
right?
unemployment and inflation.
Right, that's
Both.
correct. Both at the same
At the same time.
Right.
We should never put a minimum wage down.
Yeah.
Because number one, most people are not making the minimum wage right now. They're not. Most people are making above that anyway.
Well, no, not well.
Most.
You
I'm saying
have,
most.
Well, you have a big portion in Pennsylvania. A lot of people earning $7.25 an hour. We're at I think we need to increase that. You cannot sustain a family at $7.25 an hour.
You can't sustain a family at
Especially-
15.
Well, but at least is more than $7.25.
So where do you stop?
So if you calculate $7.25 an hour, that what you're grossing in a year is probably what $8,000 a year.
Okay.
You can't. You pay rent, you pay electricity. If you rent, if you pay, it's not enough. It's not enough.
Minimum
At-
wage
at
was never
15,
meant to be a family sustainable wage.
It's not, but a lot of people are earning minimum wage because they can't find or they just can't find a job to pay more. So people are caught in this crossroad, right? I just think we need to increase the minimum wage. It has to be beyond $7.25 an hour, at least 10. So Drew, I think these conversations with you are great. We can continue talking and there's a lot to talk about.
No, absolutely. I think we have about 5 minutes left. That's what I'm being told. What else? Did anything else happen in the? How did Biden do?
Biden did fairly well. Biden tends to talk a lot. His forte is talking with people. He likes that personal touch, that personal connection with people. That was in display in the town hall meeting, especially when a mother stood up with her daughter talking about the vaccines and her daughter, not being able to go back to school because of the COVID-19. So he kind of, I promise you, you will be back in school. So he has a lot of compassion for kids. You were able to see that in display at the town hall meeting. But it was pretty good. You saw his virtues and his flaws, as stated before. He tends to talk a lot and kind of deviate from the question a little bit. It's just the way he
goes off
processes.
script.
He goes off script.
You could be talking about President Trump. In
Yeah,
that same way.
he goes off script, but
Well, I guess in a town hall there is no script, obviously. But.
yeah. But he's a fair guy. He's a very compassionate man. That was in display. It was kind of different from Donald Trump. This guy is just a centrist. He's very reflective in his views and even in the way he speaks about things. So
I don't know if he's a centrist anymore.
I think he is.
Canceling student debt is definitely not a centrist.
I think that's a good thing. How come these countries, if you go to Central America, if you go to South America, education is free. You don't have to pay. You don't have to pay anything. But that's another conversation, Drew. We're not going to go there.
We're not going to. I'm going to have to study that because
you go to any other country, and education outside of the United States is basically free. You don't have to pay, and there's no debt.
To what grade?
To what degree?
To what grade?
No, in college, you don't pay for your college education.
What about graduate?
A graduate, I don't know if probably there is, but not sure. Not well versed on that. But
again, I don't think college should be free because not everyone should go to college. But if you make it free, everyone will go to college, and then it will increase the price because the laws of supply and demand. If you are increasing the demand without increasing in the supply, and the demand is by telling everyone you should go to college because it's free, then everyone's going to go to college, and it will drive up the cost of college.
Education is too expensive in the United States. Interest rates are too high, and there's people who just can't afford it. And I think education should be made available, whether you're rich, middle class, or poor. It should be available to anyone.
So would you say free public school education or free college? You can go anywhere you want.
I think college education should be accessible.
So
and
Yale and University of Pennsylvania should both be free?
I think it should be made available for people who cannot afford to pay
Well, I think
that type
I
of
think
college.
in many ways it is. I
well-
think with scholarships it is, and with grants.
With
and-
scholarships, I don't know. They tell you that you'll get X amount in scholarships, and when you're done your college education, you're owed like $80,000. I don't know what that
Sure,
scholarship.
no, because
means and
I talked to an admissions person. This was on a this is a high school level, and it was interesting because they said that they're starting to give more aid to kind of people in the middle. Because they said that right now they have he described it as a dumbbell effect. He said we have all the people who are rich who can afford this private high school,
Yeah.
and then we have people who we give full scholarships to because they can't afford this high school.
Right.
And he said, but then we have all these people in the middle who can't afford $40,000 a year, but are not going to be eligible to get those full scholarships or the grants
They can't.
to go for free. So even those the high schools who, and I'm speaking specifically high schools, they've learned, and relatively recently, that they're going to miss people, and I'll say like me, people like me who I can't afford $40,000 a year for high school for
So
all my
hopefully
children.
you have a scholarship fund for your daughters, so they don't go through this issue of having to pay for their college.
Oh no,
education.
absolutely. You know what? I do. I am saving, but my daughters will absolutely be paying for their college tuition
Okay.
because I did. I both took out loans. I worked. I'm gonna sound like an old man now. I made about $2,000 to $3,000 every summer, working my tail off, and that went right to my mother and father.
Wow.
That was it. Like there was no. It was here's the money, and by the way, you have to buy your books, and you want beer money, don't call us.
Wow.
So my children will absolutely be doing that because you know what? I went to class every day. I never missed class.
Mm-hmm.
I always went. I didn't study as hard as maybe I should, but I went. It was because I paid about half of my college tuition.
Good for you.
My undergrad.
Good for you that you had the ability to do that.
No, it's not about the ability. Anyone has the ability to do that.
I
Leslie.
didn't have. My father paid a portion of it, but I didn't have the ability to do that.
Oh no, you had the ability to make money every summer and winter.
Yeah, I did, but
and take loans.
I chose.
You spent too much on beer. That's the problem. That is the problem. It was too much of that beer money.
Well, Drew, I think
I think we're
concluded.
coming toward the end.
Yeah.
Yes. So, thank you again.
Thank you, Drew.
Sorry I was a little late, and you're listening to Usula Media, the Republican Zone, and Voices of Change.
The Republican Zone is brought to you by Drew Murray, a modern view from the Republican lens, covering local and national news, understanding that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to politics. The Republican Zone airs Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m. and Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m.